Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take big complex ideas, we strip them down, and basically give you the ultimate knowledge shortcut. Today we're exploring a really powerful idea that we found running through our sources, and it's this: the key to total peace, to joy, to fulfillment. It isn't something you go out and find, it's already fully formed inside you.
Yeah, and the material we looked at makes this, it's a pretty startling claim. It suggests that all psychological suffering has just one single root cause.
One cause.
One. And that all the external things people usually chase, like doubling your income, finding the perfect relationship, even breaking a lifelong habit, those are just side effects.
Side effects, not the goal itself.
Exactly. They're byproducts of an internal shift.
Okay, so that immediately flips the script on how most of us approach self-improvement.
Yeah.
We spend our whole lives trying to get the external stuff right, thinking that will give us the feeling.
Right.
But the core lesson here is that the feeling is the secret. So I guess our mission for this deep dive is to isolate this single root cause of suffering and then figure out how knowing it lets us, genuinely thrive. Okay, let's unpack this.
To start, we have to get our heads around a really fundamental distinction. You see it in a lot of ancient traditions. And that's the difference between pain and psychological suffering.
Pain versus suffering.
Right. Pain is, it's unavoidable. Terrible, unfortunate things happen. They just do. But our sources are really, really clear on this point. Suffering is optional.
Okay, now that phrase, suffering is optional, it sounds great in a book. But, for someone who's dealing with a real crisis right now, it can feel a little dismissive.
Of course.
How can you possibly choose not to suffer when that first arrow, that negative event, hits you?
And that's where this Buddhist concept of the two arrows is just so essential. The first arrow is the external event. It hits you. You can't control it.
You can't control it.
But the second arrow, that's our reaction to it. The emotional suffering, the story we tell ourselves about the pain. That second arrow, according to this whole understanding, is completely optional.
Because it's self-inflicted.
It is 100% self-inflicted.
So if we can choose not to fire it, why do we keep doing it? Sometimes for years, even decades. It suggests we just fundamentally misunderstand where our feelings come from.
That's it. That's the whole thing. The material shows the root cause is, well, it's surprisingly simple. We're constantly living in a world of thought, not reality.
A world of thought.
Yeah, we mistake our internal mental chatter for the actual objective, neutral truth of what's happening in the moment.
So how is that different from just, observing the world? Doesn't the human mind just naturally interpret everything it sees?
It does, but there's a huge difference between observing something and then believing that your subjective interpretation of it is the thing.
Okay.
Sydney Banks, he summarized it perfectly. He said, "Thought is not reality, yet it is through thought that our realities are created."
That's the hinge point right there. We're constantly filtering life through our own personal lens, which can make the objective world seem completely different to the person standing right next to us.
Think about the coffee shop example from the sources. It's a great one. You have two people at the same table, smelling the same coffee, hearing the same background noise.
Same exact environment.
Identical. Yet one person is having a full-blown existential crisis, totally stressed about their life, while the other is just peacefully people-watching.
So the external reality is exactly the same. Same smells, same sights. But how the world feels to those two people couldn't be more different.
Which proves that our experience is generated purely from the inside out.
And the job analogy makes it even clearer. Let's say you're furious about your job.
Okay.
You could be sitting on your sofa at home with your family, miles away from the office, and you can still generate this intense, real feeling of anger just by thinking about work.
Right, the job isn't even there.
The job is distant, but the fury is right there with you. That proves the external event isn't the cause. The cause is your thinking about the event.
So our feelings don't come from what happens to us.
No, they come from our own interpretation. We can only ever feel what we're thinking in this exact moment.
Okay, so if we can only feel what we're thinking, what happens if we just think less? That leads us to a really crucial distinction that the sources say alleviates suffering. And that's the difference between thoughts, with a capital T, the noun,
Okay.
and thinking, the verb.
Versus thinking.
Exactly. Thoughts, the noun, are like energetic, mental raw materials. They're effortless, spontaneous. They just pop in. They're these infinite downloads. And they're almost always expansive, creative.
So they're the initial data stream, that flash of insight that just arrives.
Precisely. Now, thinking, the verb, that's the manual, strenuous act of engaging with those thoughts. judging them, criticizing them, analyzing them. It's effortful, it's restrictive, it's destructive, and it comes from the ego.
That's where all the friction is created. Okay, let's use the income thought experiment from the sources. If you ask someone for their dream annual income and answer a thought, it just pops into their head, right? Effortlessly. And it usually feels exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the moment you ask them to actively think about that number,
Oh, yeah.
to rationalize it, to judge if they deserve it, worry about how they'd ever get it, that's when the self-doubt, the criticism, the anxiety, all that stuff floods in. That's the destructive thinking taking over.
It's the judging of the thought that causes the problem. The initial thought created excitement, but the manual analysis, the thinking, it just destroyed it.
So, in a nutshell, thoughts create, thinking destroys. It destroys by imposing all these limiting beliefs and judgments on top of this pure creative energy.
Yeah, this is a profound insight. This idea that we are always just one thought away from a totally different reality. And it's built on this foundation of how our experience is even generated in the first place. What Sydney Banks called the three principles.
Right. The three principles: universal mind, universal consciousness, and universal thought. Now, I know that can sound very abstract, a little out there.
It can, yeah. So let's simplify it. Instead of defining them philosophically, let's just look at their function, how they work. Think of them like a projection system for your own personal reality.
That's a perfect analogy. Universal mind is the power source and the projector itself. It's that infinite intelligence, the life force behind everything, the energy that makes your body heal without you telling it to, that keeps the planets in orbit.
And when our minds are quiet, we're naturally connected to that power source.
Right.
And we feel peaceful, whole.
Yes. In thinking, all that ego noise is what creates the static. It blocks the flow and creates this feeling of separation.
Okay, so mind is the projector. What's next?
Then you have universal consciousness. That's the lens and the screen. It's the awareness that allows us to take that invisible energy and turn it into something we can see and feel. It's just the capacity to be aware of our thoughts in the world.
And universal thought is the film reel. It's the raw mental data that gets projected onto the screen of our awareness.
So these three principles are always working together seamlessly to create our reality. But the suffering happens when we confuse the content on the film reel, our temporary thought, with the actual objective reality of the whole system.
Okay, so if thinking is the root of the problem, the goal isn't to stop the flow of thoughts. That's impossible.
Impossible and not even necessary.
Right. It's to minimize the thinking about the thoughts. But how do you stop a habit as ingrained as overthinking? Most self-help is about, fighting negative thoughts, reframing them.
And according to this material, that effort is the exact opposite of what you need to do.
The opposite.
Yeah, look at the analogy of the cloudy water. If you have a bowl of dirty, cloudy water, how do you make it clear? You don't filter it or stir it up more. You just let it sit.
You do nothing.
You do nothing. You allow it to sit still.
So the key isn't intervention. It's conscious non-intervention. Just seeing the thinking for what it is, temporary dirt, and allowing it to settle, knowing that the mind will naturally clear itself if you leave it alone.
That's it. This is so vividly illustrated by that Zen parable of the empty boat.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, this young samurai is furious when an incoming boat just slams into his... He's ready for a fight, ready for violence, but when he looks, he sees the boat is empty.
His anger just vanishes instantly.
Gone. Because his fury wasn't caused by the physical collision, it was caused by his own instant story about it. This idea that someone was piloting the boat and was being careless or disrespectful.
The story he made up.
The story. So all those people, all those situations that upset us, they're just like that empty boat. They're neutral, they're powerless until we choose to react with our strenuous thinking, injecting a narrative and judgment into it.
That sounds great in theory, but let's get practical. The natural fear is that if we stop thinking and analyzing and worrying, we'll just stop being productive. Won't non-thinking just lead to inaction?
It's the opposite. The opposite is true. Non-thinking is actually the state of peak performance. It's what people call flow or the zone.
Right.
When athletes are at their absolute best, they aren't manually calculating angles or thinking about their next step. They are operating from a place of pure, spontaneous, instinctive action.
That's like the Japanese concept of mushin, right? A mind free of the static of fear, of anger, of random thoughts. It's just relying on trained subconscious action. That's not laziness. That's incredible efficiency.
It's total efficiency. I mean, look at geniuses who needed solutions. Thomas Edison would hold steel balls in his hands while he napped in a chair. When he fell deeper asleep, his hands would relax, the balls would drop and wake him up.
And he'd often have the solution pop into his head.
Exactly. Einstein would play the violin when he was stuck. They weren't trying to force an answer, they were creating space to receive one.
Okay, let's apply this state of clarity to ambition. We spend so much time setting goals that just cause intense pressure. Our sources suggest goals come from two very different places.
Yes, they distinguish between what they call desperation goals and inspiration goals.
Desperation goals.
Desperation goals are born out of a feeling of scarcity or urgency or need. They are almost always means goals.
Give us a concrete example of a means goal.
I need to quit my job so that I can finally escape this constant stress. The goal, quitting the job, is just a vehicle to get away from a negative feeling.
And when you achieve it, the relief is fleeting.
It's totally fleeting because the underlying desire to escape was never really addressed. The emptiness comes right back.
Okay, so then inspiration goals, by contrast, feel light.
They feel light, yeah. They come from a place of deep movement, abundance, wholeness. They feel like a calling. An architect designs because they feel compelled to build, not for the fame or the money. They are ends in themselves. It's totally internally driven.
And the beauty of this whole framework is that it gives us a really simple way to tap into that abundance, to bypass the ego's analytical, destructive thinking. This is the activation question our sources provide for you, the listener.
If I had infinite money, already traveled the world, had no fear, and didn't receive any recognition for what I do, what would I do or what would I create?
The answer that just surfaces,
Yeah.
without you manually, frantically thinking about it, that spontaneous, clear answer, that's your divine inspiration. That is your internal guidance system, and it can only operate in the space created by non-thinking.
And that intuition, your inner wisdom, it will always show you the next right step, even if it goes completely against logic or what everyone else is telling you. And here's the crucial part. Society will almost never confirm your intuition until it's already mainstream. So you have to learn to trust that clarity from within.
Which brings us right back to the simple math of our psychological life. Our negative experience isn't a result of outside pressure.
No. The strength of any negative emotion you feel is in direct proportion to how much strenuous manual thinking is happening in that moment. You are always, always one insight away from experiencing a completely different reality, one free of all that unnecessary suffering.
And as your mind tries to process that, the radical simplicity of this truth, that thinking is the root cause, remember this is closing thought from the sources, your ego will try to fight this. It will try to make it more complex.
Because the truth is always simple. If you want to find the truth, look for simplicity.
So I challenge you this week to simply notice. When does your mind try to complicate a simple, joyful moment? When does your manual thinking hijack your peace? Just by noticing, you are already creating the space for clarity.